Okay. Ready?
Alrighty, folks, good morning and welcome to another episode of Cycle 25. Today we're lucky enough to have our very own Andre, VE3BIC, to talk to us about my first tower. So if you want to go ahead and share slides there, Andre.
There we go. And good morning, everybody. So about 2 years ago, I started putting up my
Andre,
first radio.
sorry, I'm not seeing your slide. Now I'm seeing your slides. Okay.
All right.
Carry on.
About 2 years ago, I started putting up my antennas, and I experienced a lot of electrical noise from the neighborhood, and I was rather disappointed at how poorly the situation was panning out, considering how much money I had invested up to that point on radio gear and whatnot. So I um, took the leap to put up a tower um, with the intent of possibly getting above it and getting better range than my Omni would. So this is my foray into acquiring a tower, putting it up, going through all of the experience of checking for legalities and engineering exercises, and I hope you enjoy it. Okay. There we go. Oh. All right. So when I first started looking for a tower, I was connected to Peter West, and he connected me to an amateur in Smiths Falls, which is about 60, 75 clicks away from my house. And this gentleman had acquired a tower, an antenna, and a rotor and a controller from an estate sale, but really wasn't interested in putting it up. So he put it up for sale, and I bit off on the purchase. So the antenna that came with it is a Strikeforce 3-band. It's 20, 15, and 10 meters. I found that it tunes up very nicely at 40 meters. So that's been my mainstay. Now, the reason I'm showing this particular page is because down below you'll see front of antenna. That becomes significant later on. But for the engineering information, there's the wind load, the mast torque, and the weight, which I had to transcribe and pass along to an engineering firm for some work. This is basically the tower. It's a Wade DMX 60. What I got was about a 20-year-old tower in fantastic condition. And in preparation for it, I put a new rotor bearing on so that there would be no question about it seizing up anytime soon. What was hard to get was the tower surface area. Had to do a lot of digging, and interestingly enough, it only looks like a 3 square foot sail to the wind, even though it's 60 feet tall. So that was really surprising. The other piece of information that was important to the structural engineer was how high above the top of the tower the antenna was going to be mounted. The system came with this rotor and controller, and I'm quite happy with it. The rotor seems to have a spot where the lock doesn't comes disengaged, so some days it weathercocks, but it's not been a problem so far. So Now I'm putting up a tower in a residential neighborhood. Can I do it with, do I need a permit or not? And I spent about 2 weeks digging through the City of Ottawa's bylaw documentation, and it is really ambiguous. It appears to be conflicting, but what did help was they have a section on exemptions. So if you notice, I highlighted line 5 that describes the meter being actually the antenna supporting structure, and they include the mast and the antenna on top at 15 meters above ground level, which is 48 3/4 feet. Well, then you go to section 5 of that documentation, and they come up with less than 18 meters in height. And then section 3.2.2 talks about 16 meters in height. What am I allowed to do? It seemed to be very conflicting, and I actually ended up starting a email thread with a city planner, and the information in the red was the summary of her emails. And as long as I comply with section 5.1, which is I don't put a light on it, it's less than 18 meters in height total, and it's set back from all the lot lines by 1.5 meters, I'm good to go. But that was really hard. It was like trying to extract hen's teeth. A top view or sky view of my house. The yard looks really cluttered because I had, at the time, 3 trailers on the lot. But right in the center of the screen is a square in red. That's where the tower was going to be located. It puts it central to the 2 trees that may become a problem in the future. The one on my yard by the street, and the one located in my neighbor's yard. So having the details from the tower, the details of the antenna, the okay to go ahead and build without needing a building permit, a piece of information called soil load bearing capacity, I sent everything off to the structural engineer. Now, a couple of notes here. If you take my slides and the information that I've presented up to this point, you'll notice there's some discrepancies. And that's because what I sent to the engineer, I overspec'd the finished tower height, and I underspec'd the mast pipe for their calculations. So the whole thing would have safety margin, and it would be overbuilt. So there was means to my madness. If you're not familiar with soil load-bearing analysis, there are engineering firms that specialize in testing the shear, which is the side slip, and the load, which is the compressive load of the soil, so that when you build something heavy, it either doesn't sink away on you or doesn't tip. So I was having some construction done. I was renovating my house, and it needed some additional support. So I had this information from 2002 still on file. It's relevant because beyond about a 3-foot depth, the soil really doesn't change over time. So I just reused this. Also, I couldn't use the Wade antenna suggestion for the base because they assumed a different pounds per square foot soil capability than what I had. Handing all of that information over to the structural engineer along with $2,000. They sent me back this 1-page drawing that specified the length, width, and depth of the concrete slug that I was going to have to bury in the ground, how much tower needed to be embedded in the concrete, and the characteristics of the concrete that I needed to use. So now I'm off to the races. And that's what it looks like with the base sunk into the concrete. Since the tower I had exceeded the 18 meters, I elected not to use the bottom section, the bottom 8-foot section, and I took the next section and I sunk about 5 of the 8 feet into the concrete. As prep, I wire brushed all of the leg interfaces where the sections join, and I put anti-seize compound on it. And the reason for that was to clear off any rust so that when the bolts are tightened up, it's really a good solid joint and not embedded with flake. Also, I wanted to maximize the conductivity because static electricity can be generated by the wind blowing through the tower. And if there's any insulation between the legs, you end up with a static jump, a spark jump between the legs as it discharges, and that creates noise on the radios. It was quite an experience trying to find a contractor to dig the hole. It took me 4 months to find somebody that had the time and the equipment at the same time. Concrete companies would either not return my calls, would promise and not show, until finally I found somebody who promised and did show. In the meantime, the hole kept filling up with water, and it was a regular event to pump out the groundwater. In the end, it held 2.24 meters, so that's about 4 tons of concrete. After it was poured, I had to leave it in this state for a month so that the concrete set to a point where I wouldn't crack it during assembly, because there would be some side loading on the tower legs. By this point, snow has fallen. We had a little bit of snow, and I was getting ready to do the assembly. Since I'm working above ground, I wore a safety harness through the whole event or the experience. This particular one is called a roofer's harness. The tie off is in the back, so it leaves you suspended in the air as if you were parachuting. And because of the type of work I do during the day, I have a fall arrest course certificate, and did everything properly. A note that from the course was that this is fall arrest. This isn't fall prevention. You can always do something stupid and fall out of the bucket, fall off the ladder, whatnot. The harness keeps you from the sudden impact on the ground, but what can happen is that if you fall with enough impact, when the safety lanyard tensions up, it can actually constrict the veins and arteries in your legs with the straps of the harness. And you have about 4 to 6 minutes to call for help before you black out, because of your blood system, your circulatory system is completely messed up at that point. This is a shot of me in the process of assembly. I built a gin pole, which is basically a pole with 4 large fingers on it that hook into the tower's cross braces, and then extends beyond the top of the section of tower that you're trying to assemble to. I used 1-inch Schedule 40 pipe for the gin pole, and it was just on the edge of not being strong enough to hold the sections of tower. You can see that I've got quite a load on there, and the pole is leaning. It didn't bend permanently, but there was enough lean that it was it caused me some worry when the sections were heavier. I replaced all of the bolts that came with the tower with stainless steel bolts and fasteners to prevent corrosion. And since I'm using machine bolts, I went around with a torque wrench and torque set each bolt in the system. In this particular picture, I've got the rotor already on the top of in this section of tower that's installed, and I'm just putting up the topmost section that contains the mast bearing. Bit of experience here. The lift is all electric. This particular one is all electric, and it blew a fuse. So for the next hour and a half, I was stranded 30 feet up. Couldn't get out and climb off the tower, down the tower. Couldn't lower the bucket. So it was an interesting afternoon. This is the equipment that I finally finished assembling the tower with. Much better choice than the electric one. The electric one was rated at 55 feet. On a 50-foot tower, that was too close to vertical, and it wasn't very stable. This is a dream to operate. Extends to 65 feet. The bucket articulates side to side, up and down. You can adjust the tilt. It's motorized so that you can drive it around, rotate. Oh, wonderful piece of equipment. But they rent out at $1,700 a week. So gotta have those pennies saved up if you're going to embark on this kind of a project. As a finished project, that's what the tower looks like. Nice dusk shot that my wife captured for me. I did need to recruit my neighbor to help me with the final installation of the antenna because the 19-foot boom was just unmanageable by myself. Everything else I could do by myself, but that was the one part I needed help with. I wanted to get off on a good start, so it's all new rotor wire, all new coax. All of the coax connections are wrapped with micro adhesive tape, rubber tape, so they're watertight. I installed a brand new baling on the boom and wrapped it. I also left enough length at the bottom so that this summer I can start installing lightning arresters on the before the cable enters the house. In the background, you can see a small mast with a whip at the top. That's my 2-meter, 70-centimeter antenna. And since I had some mast sticking out above my Yagi, in that 2-meter antenna got relocated. Did I miss anything? Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, the front label on the drawing, I missed that. And so I accidentally mounted the antenna 180 degrees out of direction. I was really lucky. The rental company was running late with their pickups, so I jumped into the bucket quickly and spun the mast around in the rotor. And final performance, this is what the SWR looks like on the Yagi, 20 meters, 10 and 15, 15 and 10. They're all less than 1.2 to 1. So I'm really happy with that. And that's the end of my show.
And Paul's still trying to get a hold of you. So that's
Yep.
I believe in conditions. I believe it's going to work out for you. So any questions?
No.
I have a question.
Yeah, go
Looks
ahead.
good.
Yeah, Andrew, you did not have to get a permit from the city after all, or
I did not.
okay? And did you submit engineering to the city?
No, they did not require any documentation. They really didn't want to have anything to do with it, as long as none of the neighbors complained.
Yeah.
And so before I went to the engineering firm and started spending money beyond the cost of the tower, which I could have resold if this was going to be a problem,
Yeah.
I polled all of my neighbors, and they all said, "Hey, go ahead, knock your socks off."
Yeah. My neighbors complained. I had 4 notices of complaint before before the first month. On your engineering, did you get a stamped signed set from the engineering company? Or
Yes,
just-
I did.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. If there was going to be any insurance claims because of something going south on me, either
Right.
during assembly or later on, I wanted to be able to support why I built it the way I built it.
Excellent. Oh, and the distance from the side line of the property to the bottom of the tower, did that meet that setback requirement? It looked close, where it looked closer in the picture, the aerial photograph.
Oh,
Is there thought if the tower falls over that it lands on your property, not your neighbors? Is that what they're thinking?
that is what they're thinking. But the other thing was that what they want, the 1.5 meter setback from the lot lines, was for service easements,
Oh, okay.
predominantly service easements.
Yeah.
There is a sentence in there that said that I had to be a quarter of the tower length away from the lot line as well. And that's because most towers don't fail at the bottom. They fail somewhere in the upper half.
Really? You wouldn't think that. That's interesting.
So it was interesting. I spent a lot of hours on the internet digging through this stuff to make sure that I got it right.
Yeah. I was a planning commissioner. I helped write a couple of general plans. I was also a building inspector. So, and just by coincidence, there was another ham on the planning commission with me, a 5-member commission, and we also got a lady to agree to exempt all ham radio towers, period, in Nevada County. I don't know if it's still that way, Randy. Randy and I were neighbors.
I don't know, lived out in the country on 5 acres. You really don't care at that point. So
Yeah, that's true.
it's
Anyway.
far enough back that the elements don't hang over the lot line.
Mine do.
Yes,
Mine do. Yeah.
mine is, yeah.
No.
It's 25 feet from the edge of my garage to the lot line, and that means that there is approximately 9.5 feet of boom swinging around, which keeps the antenna from hanging over the lot line.
My last question, Andrew. Was it worth all the work, and are you happy with the performance compared to what you had before?
Before I had a 5 BTV vertical on the steel roof of my garage. The intent of the steel roof was to use it as the counterpoise. Yeah, well, that steel roof makes a really good noise collector. So yes, I'm very happy with the result of putting up the Yagi.
It was worth the work.
It was worth the work. It was a lot of fun. It was a little more, considerably more expensive than I had initially expected when I embarked on this, but it's not going anywhere for at least another 20 years.
Well, you can use that 5 BTV as a noise source for your noise canceller now.
Well, actually, in setting up my ham desk, that's what I've been doing.
Yeah, me too. I've got a 5B TV on the fence and a Yagi, and the BTV is connected to the QRM eliminator gizmo.
If you put a
Yep.
coil on the verticals, the noise goes way down. DX Engineering and Array Solutions sell those, Jim and Andre, because verticals are inherently noisy. The other thing I wanted to say is you're very lucky that your board of supervisors only made you put it 25 feet from the property line. For any of my towers, they have to be 115% from the edge of the property line, because the township government wants margin in case the entire thing just falls down vertically. The other issue that I have found is to have it some distance from your neighbors makes it much easier to pass the RFI, the radiation exposure evaluations that we all do for our stations. So I'm grateful that I have mine some distance from my neighbors. If I had a neighbor 25, 30 feet away, I could probably run QRP, but no other power.
Okay, Canada hasn't gone down that road yet, but I'm only pushing 125 watts max PEP at any time, so it shouldn't be an issue anyway.
Maybe on 10 meters, that would be it. Your antenna is a great antenna. I've had a couple of those. I think Randy has something similar, but it's now commercially sold by JK as a modified C3S, sort of beefed up elements and beefed up boom to element mounting brackets. They call it the JK/C3S. And I've had the original C3 built by N6 Bravo Tango Tom. And then I've had the JK, and I'll be darned, the JK is an improvement over even one that Tom built and assembled for me at my house.
Oh, well, that's good to know.
Alrighty. So at this point, I'm going to stop the YouTube stream, and thank you so